Every company you've ever heard of runs on the same invisible ladder. From the person making coffee runs to the person making billion-dollar decisions, there are distinct levels separating the bottom from the top. Today, we're breaking down every single one. Starting with the one role where failure isn't just accepted, it's expected. Intern. The intern is the only person in the entire building who can mess up and have everyone just smile and nod. Zero budgetary authority, zero decision-making power, zero accountability for outcomes. And honestly, that's the deal. Most internships run 8 to 12 weeks. Your daily tasks include answering phones, filing paperwork, data entry, and maybe posting on the company Instagram. The corporate world calls this a learning opportunity, which might be the most successful rebrand in professional history. But here's the thing. The real purpose of an internship isn't education. It's an audition. Companies use internships to quietly evaluate whether they want to hire you full-time before committing a single dollar. But at least the intern gets to leave after 12 weeks. The entry-level employee, they're stuck. Entry-level employee. This is where the training wheels come off. You're no longer the intern who can shrug and say, sorry, I'm still learning. You're an employee now. People are counting on you, and your work actually affects real team results. Your title could be associate, coordinator, junior analyst, assistant. Honestly, they all mean the same thing. You're new and supervised. Managers check your work constantly. You sit in meetings, but your ideas rarely get prioritized. And for the first time ever, you're getting a formal performance review. Salary typically lands between $55,000 and $90,000 depending on your field. Oh, and the best part? Most entry-level jobs require 2 to 3 years of experience. Make that make sense? But at least you have a defined role. Because once you prove yourself here, you graduate to something with actual autonomy. Specialist/analyst. This is the first level where your brain actually matters. Before this, you were paid to do things. Now you're paid to know things. Specialists go deep on a specific function, whether that's sales tactics, HR compliance, or regulatory frameworks, and they counsel others on it. Analysts dig into data, find patterns, and inform decisions. Different flavor, same seniority. Both roles typically require a bachelor's degree and 2 to 4 years of entry-level experience before anyone trusts you here. Supervision drops significantly. Instead of weekly check-ins, expect quarterly reviews based on deliverable quality, not task completion. Salary jumps to $60,000 to $115,000. Roughly a 40 to 50% bump. The market is paying for your brain now, not just your time. Here's the kicker though, a specialist's recommendation can literally change a department's entire strategy, but they can't even approve their own expenses. Zero authority to hire, fire, or control budgets. All influence, no formal power. But that changes once you stick around long enough to earn the senior prefix. Senior specialist. This is the fork in the road. Every single person who reaches this level has to make a choice. Go into management or go deeper into what you're actually good at. And a lot of companies will push you into management whether you want it or not. That's where bad managers come from. The senior specialist exists to reward people who are genuinely exceptional at their craft, but have zero interest in hurting people. You've been doing this for 5 to 7 years. Salary lands around $92,000 to $120,000. And bonuses start becoming meaningful. Your work shifts from routine analysis to genuinely complex strategic problems. You might lead a multi-million-dollar cost optimization initiative instead of generating monthly reports. Here's the weird part. You can influence a company's entire strategy through your findings. You present directly to senior leadership. You define your own project scope and methodology, but you still have zero formal authority over anyone. You can't assign work, can't evaluate performance, can't discipline the intern, but at least you get to stay in your lane. The next level, you don't get that luxury anymore. Lead. This is where careers quietly go to die. Team lead is the first time you're responsible for other people's output, not just your own. You're supervising 5 to 15 people, earning somewhere between $80,000 and $120,000. And here's the catch, you're still doing the actual work too. You're a player coach, breaking projects into tasks, assigning them based on who can handle what, coaching people through problems, and yes, celebrating wins is literally part of the job description. But here's where it gets interesting. Team leads can't hire anyone, can't fire anyone, can't decide promotions or salaries. Those decisions belong to the manager above you. People follow you because they trust you, not because they have to. It's the last level where personal influence matters more than formal authority. And the brutal truth, being amazing at the work and being amazing at managing people who do the work are completely different skills. A lot of exceptional contributors get promoted here and discover that the hard way. But if you survive this level, the next one hands you real power. Manager. This is arguably the most important level in the entire corporate hierarchy. Not because managers have the most power, they don't, but because the manager is the level every single employee actually experiences on a daily basis. A good manager multiplies productivity across their entire team. A bad manager, mass resignations. It's that simple. Managers oversee anywhere from 3 to 20 employees, pulling in around $110,000 to $160,000 a year. And here's the thing, they've completely stopped doing hands-on work. Their days are now performance reviews, hiring interviews, budget tracking, and a truly staggering number of meetings. But here's where it gets interesting. Managers hold real positional power for the first time. People follow your direction because of your title, not because they like you. The catch? You're accountable for the output of people you didn't hire, using budgets you didn't set, toward goals you didn't create. All the responsibility, limited control. But if you think that tension is bad, wait until you see what happens when they give you even more teams to worry about. Senior manager. This is where managing people stops being the job and starts being the mechanism. Your direct reports are now managers themselves, which means you're 2 layers removed from anyone doing the actual work. You're overseeing 10 to 40 employees through a structure of direct and indirect reports, pulling in roughly $140,000 to $220,000 a year. The job shifts entirely from tactical people management to strategic implementation. You're not thinking about whether this week's tasks got done. You're thinking about how your entire function operates. You're attending executive meetings, participating in company-wide discussions about direction, and here's the critical upgrade. You now make hiring and firing decisions independently. No more recommending them upward. The training wheels are off. But here's the real job nobody tells you about. You're a translator. Executives speak in abstract strategy. Your teams speak in operational reality. You sit between 2 worlds that often don't speak the same language, turning company vision into concrete departmental action while feeding real intelligence back up to leaders who haven't been close to the work in years. And you're held accountable not just for team performance, but for strategic alignment. A senior finance manager's job isn't whether budgets get submitted on time, it's whether the financial structure actually supports company strategy. But if senior managers translate strategy downward, the next level owns the strategy itself. Director is where everything changes. This isn't a promotion, it's a tier shift. Before this level, your entire career could theoretically be spent mastering one thing. After director, that's over. You have to understand how your function serves the entire company. And you have to navigate the politics of multiple departments that all think their priorities should come first. Directors don't just get promoted up from senior manager. They're appointed by senior leadership. The selection process itself is different because the expectations are different. You're not managing people day to day anymore. You're creating strategy, handling governance, managing relationships with partners, investors, and potentially regulators. Your budget authority jumps from hundreds of thousands to millions. Here's the real defining line. Senior managers implement strategy directed by others. Directors make the strategy. They attend executive meetings, represent their function to the outside world, and shape decisions affecting multiple departments. Quick caveat though. The director title has become so inflated in banking and tech that a director at one company might be equivalent to a senior manager at another. So context matters. But if you think director sounds like a lot of responsibility, wait until you see what gets added at the senior director level. Senior director is the corporate world's most awkward title. You're powerful enough to run significant portions of a company, but you're positioned just outside the formal executive tier, and everyone involved knows it. Here's the thing, some companies skip this title entirely. Others use it as the primary layer between director and vice president. There's zero standardization. A senior director at a smaller company might manage as many people and as large a budget as a vice president at a bigger one. The title just doesn't travel cleanly across organizations. The work at this level is almost entirely strategic. You're establishing direction for entire functional areas, evaluating division performance, making capital investment decisions, and managing relationships with board members and investors. You might sit on executive committees, you might attend board meetings as an observer, close enough to the top to see it, not yet formally part of it. And here's the kicker. Some companies deliberately use senior director instead of vice president to avoid title inflation. They're essentially essentially giving someone VP level authority while keeping the org chart tidy. The person doing the job knows exactly what they are. Salary typically lands between $150,000 and $250,000, which tells you everything about the weight of the role. The key distinction from the tier above: senior directors recommend major strategic decisions rather than making them unilaterally. They carry accountability to the CEO, not directly to the board. But that line between recommending and deciding gets very thin when you're the one with all the data. Vice President. Here's where the word executive stops being honorary and starts being literal. A vice president is a titled executive who sits on executive committees, carries direct accountability to the board, and makes strategic decisions that affect the entire company. Base salary runs $160,000 to $250,000, but bonuses and equity can double or triple that number. But here's the thing: the daily job is almost entirely strategic. Capital allocation, investor relations, board meetings, representing the company externally. VPs don't manage large teams directly. They oversee directors who manage the actual people. Now the funny part: vice president is arguably the most inflated title in corporate America. At some banks, VP is essentially a mid-level analyst role. At a tech startup, there might be two in the entire company. Context completely collapses the title's meaning. The real distinction from senior director: VPs hold formal authority to make major strategic decisions, not just recommend them. And purely functional thinking becomes a liability here. A VP of sales needs to understand how sales connects to product, marketing, customer service, and financial targets all at once. But if VP is where executive status begins, senior vice president is where it gets serious. Senior vice president. This is where your job stops being about your function and starts being about the company. A senior vice president oversees multiple business units or the company's largest functions, with vice presidents reporting directly to them. Base salary sits between $200,000 and $350,000, but bonuses and equity can match or exceed that number. Here's the thing: the work is now primarily enterprise strategy. You're sitting alongside the CEO and other executives setting company-wide direction, not just functional direction. A senior VP of operations can't just run operations efficiently. They have to show how operations support sales growth, product development, marketing, and financial performance simultaneously. And that cognitive shift is exactly why SVP to C-suite is one of the hardest jumps in corporate America. You've spent your entire career becoming the expert in one thing, and now your value comes from understanding how everything connects. The people who can't make that shift plateau here permanently. But if you think SVP carries weight, the next level basically makes you second in command. Executive Vice President. This is the last stop before the very top, and most people who reach it never go any higher. The Executive Vice President oversees multiple large business units, sometimes all of them. Senior Vice Presidents report directly to this person. Base salary sits between $250,000 and $450,000. But that's almost misleading because bonuses and equity at this level frequently equal or exceed the base. Total compensation packages here are genuinely life-changing, but here's what makes this role fascinating. The EVP is functionally the second in command. When the CEO is unavailable, the EVP assumes interim leadership authority. They create strategies for the board's approval, oversee company revenue, review budgets, ensure every department follows policy, manage partnerships, and set objectives for every vice president beneath them. That's not a department. That's the entire enterprise. Here's the thing nobody talks about. Many EVPs have more operational knowledge and institutional memory than the CEO above them. They know where every body is buried, but their job isn't to replace the CEO's vision, it's to execute it. Some EVPs spend years as the de facto operator of the company, while the CEO handles investor calls and press interviews, effectively running everything without getting the credit. The line between EVP and CEO often comes down to one word: specificity. An EVP of operations has company-wide authority over a defined function. The CEO has authority over all functions. That distinction sounds small on paper, but it's the difference between running the machine and owning it. But if you think the EVP tier is powerful, wait until we talk about the people who actually hold the title of Chief Officer, C-Suite. The C-Suite is technically not one position. It's a collection of parallel positions that all sit at the same altitude, but cover completely different terrain. And the name itself is almost too simple. Every title starts with chief. That's it. That's why it's called the C-suite. You've got the COO running daily operations, the CFO controlling every dollar that moves through the company, the CIO managing internal technology, the CTO focused on external tech strategy and innovation, the CMO owning marketing and branding, the CHRO handling people and culture, and the CSO driving company-wide strategy. And the list keeps growing. Chief Data Officer, Chief Sustainability Officer, Chief Compliance Officer. Every time a new organizational priority emerges, a new chief title gets created, which raises an interesting question. If everyone's a chief, does the title start to mean less? Compensation at this level ranges from $250,000 to over $1 million depending on the role, company size, and equity structure. And equity is where the real money lives. Base salary is almost a formality up here. But here's what actually unifies every single one of these roles. Every chief officer makes decisions that affect the entire organization. They sit on executive committees. They attend board meetings. They carry personal accountability to shareholders for their specific function. A CFO's decisions don't just affect finance. They ripple through every single decision the company makes. That's the difference between C-suite and the VP tiers below. Chief officers carry explicit company-wide authority, and every one of them reports directly to the CEO, except the CEO, who reports to someone else entirely. President. The president is the most misunderstood title in corporate America. On paper, this is the second highest operational role in most companies. In practice, the president's actual power depends entirely on who the CEO is and how they want to split the work. Here's how it's supposed to work. The CEO focuses on long-term vision and big-picture strategy. The president runs the actual business, day-to-day operations, supervising other executives, implementing strategy, approving major contracts. The president takes the CEO's grand vision and figures out how to make it actually happen. But that clean split rarely exists. Some presidents genuinely run the company while the CEO raises money and gives speeches. Others are sophisticated deputies with real authority but clear limits. And in smaller companies, one person just holds both titles because there's no reason to split the job. Base salary sits between $150,000 and $400,000, lower than you'd expect because equity and bonuses do the heavy lifting at this level. The most interesting dynamic is this. The president is simultaneously the most knowledgeable person about how the company actually functions and the person most likely to be completely overlooked by the public. That's also why presidents are the most common internal candidates to succeed the CEO. Nobody understands the machine better, but the president still answers to someone, and that someone isn't even a person. It's a group, one that holds more power than every title we've discussed so far combined. Board of Directors. The board is technically the most powerful entity in the entire corporate structure. They can fire the CEO, veto major decisions, and, legally speaking, they hold the company's accountability to shareholders. But here's the thing. They meet 4 times a year. Boards typically include 5 to 20 members, and at public companies, compensation runs anywhere from $50,000 to $300,000 annually depending on company size. Private company boards often pay less or nothing at all, and nonprofit boards typically serve completely unpaid. Their primary responsibilities include hiring and firing the CEO, approving major strategic decisions, reviewing financial performance, ensuring legal and ethical compliance, setting executive compensation, and managing shareholder relationships. That's an enormous amount of power concentrated in a group that operates on a quarterly meeting schedule with committee work sprinkled in between. Boards include inside directors, usually the CEO and sometimes other executives, and outside directors, independent experts with zero operational role. The outside directors exist specifically to provide objective oversight of management. They're the check on the people running the show. But here's where it gets interesting. The board provides governance, not operations. They don't execute strategy. They ensure the right strategy is being executed and hold management accountable when it isn't, which creates a fascinating paradox. The people with the authority to change everything are almost entirely reliant on the people below them for information about what's actually happening. And yet, there's still one person who sits above all of it operationally, CEO. This is the end of the road. The CEO holds final operational authority for everything the company does. Every decision, every direction, every outcome. They report to the board and nobody else. Base salary typically sits between $150,000 and $250,000 at smaller organizations. But total compensation, including bonuses, equity, and benefits, can blow past $1 million at major corporations. The CEO's pay is deliberately tied to the company's performance, meaning their financial outcome rises and falls with the business itself. Most CEOs need 15 to 20 years of executive experience before they even get considered. The exception is founders who build companies from scratch and assume the title on day one without climbing a single rung. Daily responsibilities include defining the company's mission and vision, setting strategic direction, hiring and evaluating every other executive, representing the company to investors, media, and the public, and serving as the primary liaison between management and the board. But here's the thing. The CEO doesn't run operations. That's the president and COO's job. The CEO is the architect of what the company is trying to become, and their entire job is making sure the organization is pointed at that goal. The absolute distinction from every other role is this. The CEO has no internal appeal. Their decisions are final. The only entity that can overrule them is the board. Accountability flows outward to shareholders and upward to governance, with zero operational authority above them. And that's the irony of the entire hierarchy. The leap from intern to CEO is essentially a journey from executing every task yourself with no responsibility for outcomes to being responsible for every outcome while executing nothing yourself. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.